Where did you get that?
I'll take the pop shield off so that I'm less knobby, you know?
No,
'Cause-
you have to leave the pop shot there and then take a screenshot so we can put that on Twitter and be like, look at this.
Absolutely knob. Yes. Hi, and welcome to Beer Christianity. My name's John T.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Malky.
Yes, Malky is standing in for Drabs. Drabs is taking a leave of absence from Beer Christianity, and so in the interests of diversity, we decided that we really needed to replace him with a cis male, straight, middle-class white man. Welcome as a representative of both the patriarchy and all of that. Thanks for joining us, Malky. Malky's just sitting there kind of smiling beatifically at me like, yeah, all right, that's cool, like, yeah, whatever.
That counts, yeah. If anything, I'm a shade or two whiter than Ben.
You are, because you're Scottish.
Yeah.
But just as handsome. It's actually kind of embarrassing how we've replaced a handsome dude with a handsome dude on an audio podcast.
Just swapped them out like a soap opera.
Yeah, actually, because when I was a kid and I watched James Bond, I literally couldn't tell the difference between any of the men in the old James Bonds. I don't know if that's like one of those brain dysfunction things where you can't tell the difference between faces, but like white dudes with short hair, I was like, what's the difference? It was all very, very strange.
Apparently it matters a lot according to the internet.
Hey, Malky, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, both physically and theologically and politically, and, emotionally.
I'm a human man, and I make pictures for a job. I'm a graphic designer. I'm married. I have children, 2 of them. They're quite nice. And theologically is a good one. At times I've described myself as a recovering Calvinist.
Nice.
10 years ago, 12 years ago, I would have been a big John Piper fanboy. Got hard into the Calvinist movement. Undoubtedly, a lot of my expressions of faith now are kind of a reaction to that. And politically, was radicalized by John T. Langley in 2010.
That's for so many of us.
So, yeah. The fact that me and John T haven't spent so much time together, I'm probably like a filthy centrist, I'd imagine, by now.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have. You've drifted firmly into the hands of Keir Starmer.
This is an intervention, Malky.
Yeah. We're just trying to bring you back into the fold. The power of Corbyn compels you. And you're currently based in a part of the country that I don't really understand. Is it the Midlands? Where's Milton Keynes? The Midlands don't exist. Midlands are the north. Are you in the north? Is Milton Keynes in the north?
I don't know. Not Midland.
Good. Okay. Well, you're listening to Beer Christianity with all the latest geography news. And yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, Malky, nice for the listeners to meet you. I have worked with you and have been your friend for a long time. And I think you and Laura met at Greenbelt last year, which is fortuitous because we're going to be speaking about Greenbelt in this episode, and this is our 1-year anniversary episode. What was the actual date that we first went live, Laura?
8th of September.
8th of September. So if I get my act together, this will come out on or around the 8th of September. But, anybody listening who wants to, send us gifts or whatever for our 1-year anniversary, you are welcome to. Get in touch on Twitter. We're at BeerXianity. You can also find us on Instagram and on Stitcher and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. You can find us, and our address is beerchristianity.libsyn.com, Libsyn. I will never understand why a podcasting organization decided to have a name that you have to spell out in audio formats. I think it's kind of weird. But yeah, so this is our first anniversary, and let's think of this as season 2, episode 1. And we're going to be talking about Greenbelt. We're going to be talking a little bit about what's been enraging us in the news and online. And we're going to be hearing from some fun people. Also coming up in future episodes, we've got the amazing Helen Painter, the theologian who spoke to us about genocide in the Bible will be coming back. Paula Gooder has said that she would consider coming on the show, and she is an amazing theologian and writer and speaker, and I'm such a fanboy, so that'll be cool. And we've got the editor of Communism, a meme page that I absolutely adore, Marco Leone, who will ideally be coming onto it in a few weeks' time as well. So those are guests who are coming up. But right now, Wild at Home, because I think the theme was going to be Wild at Heart, and then they decided to do it online, and it was Greenbelt, which has happened this year. It was Wild at Home. And I'm going to play a little message from Harry and Chris, who were on our very first episode. I feel it's important that we have on our first anniversary, Harry and Chris sent us this little message just for Beer Christianity.
Hey, this is Harry. I've just come off stage with Harry and Chris, and wow, what a whopper. I know that John T, host of this podcast, loved it because he said, I heard you guys were amazing. Not, I heard you and you were amazing. But he reads the pulse of the people and he reports that pulse back to you as if it were his own. So hopefully between then and now, he's made the effort to listen to us so he can know what the cultural movement was that was us. I was actually surprised by how emotional I felt being part of Greenbelt Online. It's always a point in the calendar, normally the first thing. And so this year, Chris and I were going to be there for the whole weekend because we weren't going to do the Fringe Festival. And then the Fringe Festival found out we weren't going to do it and cancelled. And then whole world went a bit off and Greenbelt couldn't happen. But I loved getting to bring some Harry and Chris magic and to dress up and be silly and sing our hearts out and hope that people were singing along at home. So it felt special. Hopefully next year we'll be back in a field in Kettering, but until then we will keep going with the spirit and memories and also merchandise sales from harryandchris.com. Get your CDs there. And Chris is actually not in a separate place, as you might imagine, but he's been sat here silently the whole time, and he's just about to burst into song about an otter and John T and our upcoming gig at Catalyst Light. Was that Chris? And I'm actually not going to say anything after that, even though I'm still in the same room as him, but just out of a mark of respect. And I just want to say in advance, I fully agree with everything he says, apart from the last thing. Lots of love. Bye.
Oh, thanks, Harry, for throwing it over to your mate. That's me. Don't read into the fact that I am clearly walking around outside. I just jumped outside from being sat next to Harry, and I was euphoric from our gig and having sat down in silence for so long. So I just had to get outside and also move to London quickly. And a song, there was meant to be a song about, oh yeah, there's an otter, and over there is John T. Oh, one of them is a rotter. Oh, guess what? It's not John T. I hate otters, I don't know why. There might have been experience in a past life. Let's not go there. We're Christians. There we go. Bit of sketchy theology / spirituality there. And if you want more of that, then head to harryandchris.com. I don't know if you're going to use this, but I love you. Every single person who's listening to this.
Harry and Chris there with sound even better than episode 1 of Beer Christianity, where the sound was genuinely shocking because I had no idea I was going to put it on a podcast when I recorded it. And their little message straight, I'm sure, off the stage of Greenbelt. Malky, what are your feelings on Greenbelt?
Yeah, I love Greenbelt. Facebook reminded me that it was, or 11 years ago even, was my very first experience with your good self, John T. And I found it a very good space theologically in terms of it was quite revolutionary to me as quite a kind of coming out of quite a conservative evangelical persuasion, that it was just a lot more chilled out and open to different perspectives and just a nice, festival vibe with some, surprising music acts. That's like, all right, they're good,
Nice. Laura, your vibe with Greenbelt.
I mean, I'm sad to have missed it this year because this was going to be my first proper Greenbelt because I was only there for the day last year. But yeah, no, I mean, if you want to hear all my thoughts on Greenbelt, please do go back and listen to episode 1 where we speak about Greenbelt. But yeah, like my overwhelming thought, I think, from when I was there was that like, this is my vibe, these are my people. Like, it was an amazing time, and I would have loved to have gone back for another weekend, but alas. But I think also it's worth mentioning that if you get any of the official communications from Greenbelt, you will have actually noticed 2 very familiar faces because Malky and I were actually featured in a photograph on a Greenbelt email. I think if you can find the one, I think send it to us and we'll give you a shout out.
I feel like, did we put this on social media? I can't remember.
I don't think we did. No, I don't think
we really should have.
Texted me.
Well, maybe we should use that picture because it definitely has a bit of my leg and both Melky and Laura in the frame, which is very
I mean, that early claim of my handsomeness is really put to the test.
There you go.
I mean, I'm looking at you now and I'm just like, I cannot believe how freaking handsome you are, and it's genuinely enraging.
Everyone needs to go find that email and then tweet us how handsome you think Malky is.
Yes, tweet us how handsome you think Malky is. Rate Malky on a scale of I'm all right, thanks, to causing me to stumble.
I think the podcast medium is the best medium for objectification.
I agree.
Oh, I had the worst objectification experience today. I was walking, this sounds like bad stand-up from the 90s, but like legitimately, like I was walking this morning and on the path ahead of me was an incredibly attractive woman, and I was like, oh, this is nice, the Lord smiles upon me. And then she turned the same corner I was going to turn, and I was like, well, this is a little bit awkward because now I feel a little bit like I'm following her, but it's fine, like she doesn't own the paths. I can walk wherever I want. I don't want to make her feel threatened. But I mean, a person can walk, they can take one of the same turns as you. And then she kept on stopping to pick up stuff from her dog. And I just kept on getting closer. And I started feeling more and more threatened by the whole situation and just getting more and more tense about, what am I going to do? Should I slow down? Is that worse? Is that better? And then she turned exactly the same corner that I was going to turn again. And I didn't go the way that I was going to, which was in fact to my house. I instead went away from my house so as not to feel like I was following her. And that was a stressful situation. And if any of our listeners have ever had that kind of stressful situation, I'd very much like you to write in and tell us about it. You can tweet us on BeerChristianity, or you can email us on beerchristianity@yahoo.com. If you guys ever had that kind of objective?
It's the real everyday struggles of the white males.
Yeah, you guys don't know. Laura, you haven't experienced
clearly. That does remind me of a thing that happened when I was on holiday, which similar energy when I was walking down the road and I saw a man and I thought, oh, that man's wearing a nice outfit. Like, I like the outfit that the man's wearing. And then he proceeded to sit down on the ground and beg for money because that man was a homeless man. And it was, kind of...
Yes, I feel like I'm rocking that vibe. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah, it was,
Oh, that's unfortunate. Anyway, Greenbelt. I also love it. I think it is a wonderful festival. I think when I first went there, I was puzzled as to why it was a Christian festival, and there are so many amazing alternative Christian bands out there, and yet they've got secular bands on here. I think I didn't get the ethos and what it was becoming. But all through the years that I've been going, I've just found it to be the most amazing place because you can really be yourself, and there is a real diversity there of thought and of theology. And I always loved the fact that you could go and enjoy kind of very orthodox Franciscan prayer and then go to a rock concert and then hear some very challenging, if not heretical thought, and just have all of that, to have Rend Collective sharing, space with Brian McLaren or, I don't know, that kind of stuff, hearing Richard Raw speak and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, Greenbelt is amazing.
Well, Rend Collective at Greenbelt?
Yeah, they were one year.
I love seeing the reaction, the response of like the secular bands who are playing. Like last year, is it Brass Against?
Oh yeah, man!
Who were amazing. A brass band playing lots of Rage Against the Machine, and things like that. Their lead singer, she was incredible, but like it almost started off like antagonistic to like these Christian types, and there was definite assumptions about like how we'd roll, and she was very like in our face about issues, I guess, or you could just see her testing the audience and then eventually come around to be like, these people are all right.
I think the moment when the entire of this Christian festival's audience seemed to be chanting along, "Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me," they were like, okay, maybe this
picked up the subtle vibes.
Yeah, we're not at Spring Harvest anymore, I think would be There are things about Greenbelt though that always end up bugging me. I feel like at the real festival, it always takes me about a day to stop saying fucking Greenbelt because some aspect of, I don't know, getting in has just, whether it's a steward or whatever, I don't know, has just been enraging and frustrating in that kind of thing. Or, there's just something that is the most Greenbelt thing. You're leafing through the program and it's vegan Taoist spirituality, leading worship on Sunday night or something like that. You're like, I mean, that's cool. And just, even this year when they were doing it online, there was this incredibly Greenbelt moment where I was like, I'll just buy my ticket on the day, and coming to it and finding a message that says, we've decided to limit the number of tickets to an online event because if there's too many people there, it just won't feel like community. And I was like, that is peak Greenbelt right there. So I didn't end up going. But Malky, you bought a pass. What was your vibe?
Again, this was just the after party, the stuff that's online on demand. It was initially a bit disappointing because looking at the lineup, Greenbelt's there's always so much on, and like, I'll look for my regular faces that I recognise, but then there's always so many bonus bits. But they've basically got for £7 you can go on and access anything that was on in the canopy and the pagoda. So there's a bunch of music acts. So naturally I watched a bit of Harry and Chris, Obs, and then they've got a few. So there's just 5 panel discussions. I started watching one. Audio was a bit ropey. I might get back into it. But then I went and watched the Black Lives Matter one, which was really good. It was a great conversation. There was, let me read the lineup. The CEO of Christian Aid was there, a priest and writer who was great, Azariah France Williams, an author and broadcaster, Emma Debari, and a poet, Lem Sissay, hosted by someone called Bev Thomas. It made me realise how many things as a woke lefty, how many things that I've watched that were filtered through white eyes, or, the discussion was hosted by white people. Everyone on that panel's black. And there was just some good assumptions made early on, like that they could get into the discussion and talk about actual stuff. It feels like you're starting so far back with like arguing with Trump supporters about the very basics of civil rights. But this was really good to get into and interesting just to hear them using their voice. And one thing that stuck out for me was how there's a danger with white friends and allies that the conversation can move on. And it's not moved out the headlines. It's just been changing. I don't know if that's good or bad. Yeah, just something to be aware of. As a white person, like, there can be a sense of fatigue about hearing about this and sadness, hearing it all. But, that's what so many people experience just on a daily basis. And they can't get away from that. So, yeah, that was a bit of a hard challenge, I felt.
Yeah. And like self-care is important, and, not stressing yourself to the point of having a breakdown and all that. I can attest to not doing that being a good thing. But I think so often with the kind of the woke white community, we tend to think of it as just an issue. It's not an issue. It's people's lives. It's not something you can move past. It's not, I was into that for a bit. I mean, you could argue that any cause worth following is that, but I think this movement is so intensely necessary because people are still being shot in the back 7 times in front of their children by policemen who later are able to take people holding AR-15s alive. People who have actually shot members of the public, they manage to take them alive because they're white, and they keep on shooting black people. The experience of racism continues. It continues to be horrific. And I I honestly don't know how Black people are not in a state of total debilitating rage at the racism that continues in our society. And I think we should all probably be closer to that position, regardless of our race, really, of being still being angry at it. I mean, have you guys been following the Kenosha stuff?
I think what was the most, I mean, not necessarily unexpected, but the most terrifying and disheartening thing was the fact that President Donald Trump refused to condemn the actions of a 17-year-old who shot and killed people. Oh, that's not great. That's not great. And like, oh, it's difficult to comprehend with a rhetoric that has been so completely warped and so completely, how on earth can it's just difficult to comprehend, like the fact there are people defending illegally carrying a firearm, taking it across state lines and using it to kill people, and that being okay, and him not being mistreated by the police, and then people who are being literally shot in the back 7 times for breaking up a fight. It's honestly, it's terrifying.
And there's always this rhetoric that comes out, and I find it most disappointing from Christians. This thing of like, but what if he wasn't breaking up a fight? What if he was actually assaulting someone? I'm like,
he's still a person.
Yeah, and you don't shoot somebody 7 times for doing that. Or like, well, he's got a criminal record. There's always some white dude in the comments who's going to be like, well, I think you'll find he has an arrest record. I'm like, we don't execute people for housebreaking. You know, we don't execute people for drug offenses or for genuinely terrible crimes like domestic violence and that sort of stuff. That's not what we do. And even if we did, it's not the fucking police's job.
Yeah.
I find it horrific, the comments particularly that I've seen on some of the stuff over the last week. I feel like my mental health has taken a knock by looking at comments on posts paying tribute to the people Kyle Rittenhouse killed, and the people who are commenting on it with comedy memes about how hilarious it is that these people got shot. And then when you go into their profiles, and they're always members of churches, they're always, you know, in some way affiliated with some local body of believers, or some of them are affiliated with soup kitchens. Some of them, terrifyingly, are like, I saw one guy who was in the American military police, you know, law enforcement types and all that kind of stuff. But some of them are just law enforcement fanboys who like guns and like power and like violence. Mm-hmm. Enough to say horrific things on pages that are meant as tributes to people who've been murdered. And they're followers of Jesus? I don't know, like how, like
they kind of police fanboys and militarized police fanboys are interesting, and I think like it shows that there is such unhealthy attitudes amongst police forces. I mean, there must be. Look at the evidence. But when you hear good cops or British cops or, you know, folks that have got some experience with that coming out and making statements like that is not the protocol. You know, you have screens of people defending, they were threatened, you know, you wouldn't know what to do in their situation, therefore shoot them 7 times in the back. But the levels of training that are in place in good places, it just baffles me that it gets through to this, that it seems like a frat boy attitude. It's so prevalent in so many police forces.
I think something that's been one of the most shocking things to come out of this conversation, at least for me, was how little training some police officers go through. Like, I saw like a thing that was like, it takes longer to become a cosmetologist in America than it does to become a police officer. Like, it takes longer to become a hairdresser than it does to become a police officer. Like, I don't know, man, that doesn't seem okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's troubling.
Yeah.
And I mean, this has been a problem that has been, highlighted a lot, obviously, over the last few years, 10 years, about American police departments becoming more and more militarized and bringing in military hardware and militarizing the streets. And just the kind of militarization of public space, which I think is one of the main reasons why people are calling to defund the police, obviously. how do we feel about America generally, and what stage on its decline into fascism we think it's at?
Asking the easy questions. I mean, I guess, like, again, we just talked about this a lot when we spoke about Joe Biden and the American left being not left, essentially. And, like, it's that, how do you argue with the people who are making comedy memes about the deaths of two people? How do you correct that? Like, is the corruption too far gone? I hope that things will be better once Donald Trump is out of office, because he's certainly a catalyst for all of this. But at the same time, living in a society where one of the most powerful world leaders, every single sentence that I hear him say is a lie, like, it's difficult to comprehend, like, how that can never be fixed, or how long it will take for that to be fixed, because it's not going to be a situation of Donald Trump gets out of office and everything's fixed and everything's fine, because, like, this is a steep slope that they've been careening down for years, decades probably, and it's going to take a lot to change that.
And it's hard, I think, when it feels like Trump's only motivation is speaking to his base and what will play well with an extremist perspective. It's just baffling, and the fact that it emboldens those radicals is alarming, and the message that it sends to everyone else, and the message that it sends to black people in particular, and people that are oppressed on the margins. I think back to, was it in Charlottesville, where there's so many stark examples. There's actual Nazis chanting, "Jews will not replace us," and ran over someone in a car. And Trump's response was, well, there was good people on both sides. He'll defend it. It's frightening.
What I find so disheartening is the conservative Christian church in the States, and actually to an extent here, because you just need to go on some Facebook comments on a Christian magazine's Facebook posts to see people shouting how much they love Trump and how much we need him. But it's Christians who ordinarily would be the first people to denounce defects of character, which I actually have a problem with. I don't care that Donald Trump has sex with porn stars. It's none of my business who he has sex with. But the people who would denounce anybody for that, to come out and go, this is the president God wants for us, and not denounce him for that. Never mind not denouncing the racism. Never mind the fact that they are moving further and further into a fascist system where they are flouting the law at every turn, where they are threatening voter suppression. The last thing Trump said about their upcoming election was that people should try to vote twice for him to test if you can commit voter fraud that way. And his attorney general saying, well, I'm not sure if that is illegal, actually.
But, like, there's so many things. If any quote-unquote normal person was to just say that would be a career-ending statement. To say something like that.
Yeah.
If if Corbyn suggested that.
Oh, can you imagine?
Then they would just be out. They're just done. And that's just a daily occurrence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the Jim Gaffigan Twitter furore? He's not usually political, is the way he's described, although he does make political statements, but he's like a clean Catholic comedian. And he made some anti-Trump statements, and somebody had tweeted at him and said, well, you've lost a lot of followers tonight. And he was like, fuck you, Becky, or something like that. and then kind of, went a bit intense on everybody with that. And he wrote a statement. I would suggest you look it up, what I've learned since I lost my mind. But what he says is, Trump is a great salesman, possibly the best salesman I've seen in my lifetime. I don't care how many businesses he has driven into the ground or contractors he has screwed over. Trump is charming, funny, and comes across as sincere. I watched Trump speak on Thursday night like I had many times before. I knew he was going to lie. I even knew some of the lies he was going to say. By the way, I'm not naive. I understand all politicians lie or bend the truth. When Bill Clinton said, I feel your pain, I gagged a little, but I did figure his heart was in the right place. I may lose you on this, but I believe most politicians are motivated by the best intentions. I might not have agreed with Bill Clinton, George W., or Jimmy Carter on a lot of things, but I do believe they had the best intentions. I don't think Trump does. This isn't just a feeling. This is something I've known for a long time. He goes on to say, for me, this isn't a debate about the size of government, taxes, healthcare, or even abortion. I miss the days when those were topics I would discuss with friends. I feel a responsibility to coming generations, my children, but selfishly, I didn't want to explain to my grandchildren that I didn't fight to stop Trump. Maybe they will see that I stood up for decency, rule of law, and equality. That's way more important to me than selling out an arena. And I think that's just the place we're in right now, is people are genuinely seeing him as a danger to democracy in the United States, as a danger to the world. And I don't want to get into this stuff of like, if only we had Obama, because Obama accelerated the drone assassination program. You know, Obama tried some quite good things, but mostly why we love him is because he was a Democrat and he was classy. And Trump is the opposite of that. That's not the main problem. Like Laura said, the fact is, if Trump's not there, all those people still are. If you're a lefty, you need to just step out of the echo chamber for a second, like not for long because you'll vomit yourself to death, but step out for a bit and check out the kinds of things that people are saying online. If you think that Biden is going to sweep the boards, you are sorely mistaken. I genuinely cannot see how Trump doesn't win by a landslide, because people love what he says. They love what he stands for, and they love his attitude. And I can understand that in a kind of Nazi Germany kind of sense of people are downtrodden, they've been lied to, and they're stupid, so they believe the lies. What I don't understand is people who should be inoculated against this kind of evil by their faith in Jesus Christ, and how they slide into that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on like the Christians who love Trump and how and why, and what is that? What are we meant to take away from that as Christians?
I can have a certain amount of sympathy with folks who are ideologically Republicans, and the way the system's set up, then it's a two-party system, and there might even be soft Republicans, more Republican than Democrat. They might hold their nose and vote for Trump. You know, he's not ideal, but better than Clinton. But the triumphalism, the celebration, the he's our man thing, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It's pure tribalism. Nationalism.
I think for me, kind of, so this is something I heard on our good friends at Tale of Two Singles a while ago. They had Dr. Lena Tott on a few episodes back, and she was explaining about how talk about happiness in singledom essentially, but also was saying that how the kind of family values preached by so much evangelical Christianity, American evangelical Christianity, isn't necessarily what is preached in the Bible, but it's what so many people experience and expect of Christianity. And I think it's the anti-abortion, it's the low-key anti-homosexuality things that kind of all link into that idea of family values. And this is, you know, the home, the traditional home, which is, you know, is biblical and what we should all be aspiring for. And this is how you get true happiness. And I think it is all linked to that. And I think it's easy to buy that. I think it's easy to be bought in by that, especially if you're coming from a position of privilege where you haven't had to consider the prevalent racism, for example, happening in America. It's very easy as a white person who is the benefactor of privilege to just be like, well, this is surely the way that is it for everyone. So I think that is where a lot of Christians are coming from in that regard. But yeah, it's the blatant turning of a blind eye to evil, really, that I don't understand.
And I guess the ideological argument was won for a lot of people throughout the Cold War, I guess. So you've still got communism, is socialism, is anything slightly left of centre, is rampant atheism and Satanism, you know. So you just tar anything with that brush. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah. Well, whatever's left.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy's not that. All right, he's our man then.
Yeah.
And you read those things where it's like, I think my boss is a communist. This is a great meme that went around. It was a genuine social media post where guys being like, I think my boss might be a communist because like I work really hard. But the more I think about it, the more I think why am I working so much harder than he is, but I don't get a raise and I don't have any kind of job security here, but he does. And because I know he's treating me so badly, he must be a communist. And I'm like, friend, that is, you're a communist.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
and we're applying the word communist to anything that's bad. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Marky.
Yeah.
It's that Cold War equating socialism with something scary and terrible. But if you give it another name and you say, well, what if we had a health insurance thing that we could all pay into, and that everyone, and maybe richer people could pay a little bit more. And I think there's two things. I think there's sin at the heart of it, a classic kind of sin of selfishness and greed, because people who are earning very low salaries are willing to take up arms and kill and die to protect billionaires from losing out on anything. The moment you start talking about taxing them more, the moment you introduce anything about redistributing wealth, you've got people who are never going to be at the top of the pile saying, no, you can't take from the billionaires because they're job creators, because deep down they believe in the lie that is the American dream, that one day they'll be rich. One day they'll have their own mega yacht. I think for me, that's sin of selfishness. And then I think the real sin is idolatry. You know, for people who want to have the 10 commandments put everywhere, they tend to skip the commandments about idolatry because they worship their flag as a graven image. They worship their country. And you had, was it Mike Pence who said this in the last few weeks, where he changed the words of a hymn and replaced God with Old Glory?
Oh man, I'm going to totally drop it. It's actually a passage in Hebrews.
Is it Hebrews?
I'm
you actually know
Bible
this
references.
is why we got
Yeah.
the Bible. Yeah. And they see nothing wrong with that. Now, I think it's also worth saying that we're in the UK, and if you've ever been in a Church of England church, particularly one of the old ones, you'll notice the eagle that represents the British Empire actually making up in the one I used to go to, the pulpit. And you have the colors of all of the military, what are they, battalions that are associated with that area that are hanging in there. You have the country's coat of arms. It's a national church. And I don't want to get all anti-Anglican here and, go all rampantly Baptist, but that's problematic. That is, for me, the abomination that causes desolation. That is bringing the profane in the form of worldly power and corrupt worldly power and violent, oppressive worldly power, and putting it in the Holy of Holies and putting it alongside God. It's not okay. It's the kind of thing that is going to throw that statue down on the ground at some point. That's the vibes I get, Or opening the Ark at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's also a vibe. I don't know. I mean, do you guys think they have a problem with idolatry?
Yeah, but I think, I don't know, firsthand a lot about the States. It's a massive beast.
It is the great beast.
No,
you are right. Malky, you are right. It is the great Satan.
But
you heard it here first from Malky.
I had a friend who every time he went to America would say, I'd say, where are you off to? And he would go, he was like a very kind of like straight up conservative Northern Irish guy. And he'd just be like, I'm off to the great Satan. That's straight up Ayatollah again.
Yeah. So many of the states are bigger than lots of countries. So culturally insular as well, as Brits or Europeans. We would joke about the lack of Americans that have passports or whatever. And just, as we talk about echo chambers, if you're in certain states, then you're Republican, your family's Republican, everyone's, of course, these things are just a given. So I think it takes a lot of awareness to break out of that, surrounded by that worldview.
So what do we say to conservative Americans? So we got listeners, we got a lot of listeners in the States. What do you say to Christians who are, if there's somebody there, if one of our listeners right now is a conservative but listens to us because they want to get angry or they want to be challenged or something, what do you say to somebody who is super pro-Trump, who thinks the Democrats are godless Satan worshippers? What do you say to a Christian like that? Because we've got to get better at this. If the church can't do this, there is absolutely no hope of solving this through anything but a civil war in the States.
I feel like maybe read Donald Trump's tweets, read the Bible, compare.
But they do read the Bible. They go to
Yeah.
churches that preach the Bible all the time. What parts of the Bible do they need to pay attention and read again? Like, what would be your...
Yeah, well, you could go like Old Testament prophets. I think I saw a meme doing the rounds about Jesus being a socialist, and that was being shot down. Like, oh, what a ludicrous idea. That's what the left thinks. I think to come in with the idea of, okay, I don't think Jesus was a socialist. However,
Yeah. You can't be a socialist in a pre-capitalist society, yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd had
But
the chance, though.
Just to take off some of our ideological glasses and look at just like what the text says, like what does that community in Acts describe about sharing resources? What do Jesus' parables tell us about giving people the benefit of the doubt and not being such into self-preservation that you're happy to give away more, even if people are taking the piss? If someone asks for your shirt, give them a coat, or whatever way it goes.
Yeah.
You know, that the whole benefits system.
Yeah.
You know, what if people take the piss? It's like, well, I'd be happier erring on that side. Erring on that side feels more Jesus-y. And welcoming the stranger, again, it's something that came up with the recent immigration stuff in the English Channel, and reading comments online that were so anti-migrants, even if we do call them migrants. And it's just like, fair enough if you want to adopt that attitude. You know, you believe what you want, but don't pretend to follow Jesus, you know, who was like uncomfortably compassionate. I think all of us need to re-challenge our ideologies. And, you know, I would describe my ideologies coming from what I know of God and of Jesus, and therefore looking to inform what we can do in the world.
Yeah, and I'm willing to have those arguments with people who go, I really do care about the poor, but I think the mechanism to help them is the markets. I think we can have that argument. I mean, I think they're wrong. And I think they need to look at what a spectacular job the markets have done so far. But I think when we start getting into the realms of, well, they don't deserve it and people shouldn't get anything for free, you're not a Christian. Or if you are a Christian, you have missed the point. You may well be saved. You know, your name may be in the Lamb's Book of Life. But I want to confidently say you've missed the point. You are speaking anti-grace and anti-Christ if you're anti-people getting good things for free, and if that makes you angry. I think that's really problematic at a spiritual level. I think if you despise the weak, and if you despise weakness, and if anything that smacks of mercy or gentleness or giving people an easy ride or being soft on anything, it's this obsession with people not getting away with things that is so the antithesis of what Jesus did for us. You know, he dies on the cross for people who were not worthy. And those people then turn around and go, it's exactly like the parable of the guy who is forgiven a debt and then goes out and beats the crap out of somebody who owes him money. You can't do that. You can't be a Christian who got freely given grace and then reject that in the rest of life and worship only strength and anti-mercy and coming down hard on people and being tough, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you are a Christian, and if that is your belief, if you don't think that people should be getting handouts and stuff like that, if you think you need to, you know, be deserving of receiving things, I think you need to really look closely at why you think that and where you have heard that, because you haven't heard that from the Bible. Just think about it. Like, that's not what we've been told. You've been told that by man-made systems that are based solely around greed and around power. And like, that's why so many of us are indoctrinated into that way of thinking. It's the ever-growing need for just constant greed by the powers that be. And that's not biblical. Like,
I mean, Malky, I've been on your social media feed, and you have some right-wing Christians who you are always very gracious with, and I am not. Why are they in that mindset?
I don't know. I think it's only really a handful of folks that are quite vocal, and I try and be as gracious as possible and probably fail a lot of times. I think certainly a couple I can think of like to be provocative. Like, I get the impression that they see an echo chamber of, everyone's progressive and we're all supposed to be a progressive and lefty and woke. And like, let's not swallow this whole without being analytical. Let's push back on some stuff. But yeah, again, I think the I think the mechanism, as you mentioned, I think that's a really strong point, because some folks would be anti-state. Like, as soon as the state gets involved in acts of mercy, that's what the church should be doing, and it's only really, I don't know, it's only really a service to God if a church is doing it or something, or charities.
Although those same mothers have no problem with the government running, invading other countries or shooting black men in the back. They're quite big government when it comes to committing acts of violence. That they're almost infinite spending, on our heroes.
Yeah, and for me, this quickly comes out as contradictions. But I think it's those sort of firm assumptions that the government must be bad, or we can't. A fear, like I guess I would have heard in the past, a fear that as soon as you start getting into social justice, a fear that as soon as you start wanting to just do good in the world for goodness sake, for spreading the love of God through a kind of intangible goodness, then that's like, oh, that's slippery territory. It's just a social gospel and you've forgotten Jesus. That's the fear.
And I always want to say to those guys, then get involved and keep preaching Jesus, But I think a lot of them think that preaching Jesus means trying to define who's in and who's out. And even if you believe in a gospel that has a really strong delineation of in and out, I don't think it's your job to tell people where they are, actually, or to make that decision. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. Apart from the contradictory statements that Jesus makes, or not the contradictory, but the paradoxical statements that he makes about salvation, that are quite at odds with the way that I got saved. And I still use that language of I got saved. I said the prayer and I meant it, and the Spirit was involved at that moment and I got saved. And I know that was the moment I got saved. But God can work slower with people, and maybe it's not so easy to define. And at no point before I was a Christian did somebody telling me off for not being a Christian make me want to become a Christian. I want those guys to get involved in the social justice stuff and go, by the way, this is Jesus. And let's also not be ridiculous about this, because you hear some kind of secularists going in and saying, all churches do is take people's money and try and enforce a right-wing social agenda on people. Let's keep in mind churches are running food banks and soup kitchens and mums and toddlers groups for free, and have been at the forefront of a lot of progressive social change, from the movement to forgive third world debt to racial justice in the States. Martin Luther King Jr. was a pastor. Like there's
even awkwardly, those Trump supporting Republicans, I'm sure I've heard of lots that would have an attitude locally. They'll be doing soup kitchens and helping homeless and stuff like that,
And I think that's where it gets awkward for me, because you can't just go, they're not Christians or they're not our brothers and sisters, but fucking hell, guys. Anyway, let's talk about Greenbelt again. Here is our friend Ruth talking about her experience of Greenbelt Online.
Hey, John T, you were asking me about Greenbelt. The truth is, I don't feel like I missed it this year. We went and camped in my friend's garden. She had a kind of event shelter up, and we literally spent 3 days in her garden with quite a lot of beer and other drinks and lots of food. And we logged on to the online Greenbelt, which is Wild at Home. We had live music from there kind of piped into our shelter. We joined in with some of the sessions, like the Black Lives Matter panel. That was really, really good. And listened to Harry and Chris. We joined in with beer and hymns, which was quite amazing. We're all pretty sick of Zoom, but they did it on Zoom with about 600 participants and spotlighted one household at a time, who all leaped up and waved at the camera. So we really did feel like we were with all these people, and what made it special was that it was Greenbelt and it was beer and hymns. And we did our own stuff as well. We had one guy do a Bible study, we had one person do a book review, and we had another doing yoga and Reiki. So nice range of Greenbelty activities. It'd be nice to go back to the real thing next year, but If we can't, we do that again.
So that was Ruth's experience of Greenbelt this year. Do let us know if you were at Greenbelt and if you enjoyed it. And if you did anything special like that. I felt super, super jealous when I saw Ruth's pictures of kind of being intense and doing the whole Greenbelt experience. I thought that sounded lovely. If you want to watch some of the talks, Malky, what's the web address for finding that stuff?
Greenbelt.tv is where it is, but if you go to the Greenbelt homepage, you'll be able to find it.
Yeah. So you can Google Greenbelt Festival. If you're one of our listeners from outside the UK, Greenbelt is a wonderful Christian festival that focuses on social justice and politics and more progressive forms of Christianity. And it's just really, really lovely. And if you ever decide to visit here, you should visit during Greenbelt and come and check it out once the world has returned to a state that we can do that sort of stuff. Laura just pointed out while Ruth was talking that we haven't actually talked about what we're drinking. Malky, what you drinking?
I am drinking a non-alcoholic beer, as is my want these days. It's got so many things written on the label, I don't know. You know, the visual hierarchy is all over the shop.
Good Lord. What is it with craft beers? I don't. So what could it be called?
Sorry, the visual hierarchy's all over the shop. It's such a graphic designer thing to say.
Really sorry. That's talking shop.
You might as well just say there's too many words on the label.
The amount of fonts. It's like called Low Tide American Shipyard. It's decent pale ale.
Nice. Who makes it?
I don't know whether is Shipyard the brand? Shipyard American? Is there a Shipyard Mexican? I don't know. It's made in Portland, Maine, USA.
I like it. Laura, what you drinking? The classic?
I've been sipping slowly on a glass of white wine. I paid £7 for a bottle of white wine. 7 of my British pounds. And I've been slowly making my way through the bottles in Aldi that look cool. So it was from a bottle that looked cool.
Show us the bottle. I want to see what it looks like.
It's in my fridge.
No. I mean, I'm interested, but I'm not that interested.
Not that interested. I will tell you that it's a kind of bottle that it's thinner than your average wine bottle, and it's slightly taller than your average wine bottle. So
is it contributing to unrealistic standards of beauty for wine bottles?
Perhaps.
What a shame. Well, I'm drinking a fat beer. This is... it's called OG, for Yay, I Am the OG. Extra Pale Session Ale by Love Beer Brewery. It's really very nice, actually, lovebeerbrewery.com, which was apparently started in 2013 as a microbrewery and expanded in 2017 to and then it says 6 BBL plant, which just makes me, it's just like one of those...
yes.
One of those acronyms that you see on porn sites that you're like, I don't know what this means.
What am I getting? But I'm enjoying it.
Side note, a friend of mine said that we were talking about, well, I'd posted something about therapy and I posted something about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And she said that it's a BDSM term as well for cock and ball torture. So every time you hear CBT,
wow.
or if your doctor tries to prescribe it, just make sure that you know which particular.
Can you clarify?
Can you just give me the full name, though? That's what I'm looking for. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for the OG. Some friends of mine were cycling to my house in Didcot, and they went past this tiny little micro brewery, Love Beer Brewery. So you can check them out. It's actually a very, very nice beer, and you can buy it from their site, which you probably should be doing if you like beer, is, buying directly from some breweries who are probably struggling right now in the corona times. Though also don't buy into that narrative that says, well, it's a small business, so it must be okay, because a lot of small businesses oppress their workers. So, but let's support these guys because we like beer. I think we've probably been talking for long enough now. Malky, how would you rate your first experience of beer Christianity?
If you don't rate it 10 out of 10, you're out.
I'd say 10 out of 10.
Hey! What a surprise!
What a surprise.
No, but for real, how have you found it?
Jonty's face. The listeners can't see Jonty's intense eyeballs staring into my soul.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, it's been wonderful, and hopefully I've not said anything accidentally racist or heretical. Cancelled by every camp.
I mean, I feel like if any Christian podcast was liable to be cancelled by every camp, it would be this one.
Yeah, probably.
It's
But it
been
hasn't happened thus far. And
because
we've been
they
doing
don't know we exist.
No, that's true.
I think that's the thing. Our listenership is select, and I do
we
actually
love them.
We do love the listeners. Please write to us and tell us something. We love to hear from you guys, and we find it really encouraging. And every time I pick up a message of somebody saying something nice, I forward it to the Beer Christianity crew, and everyone is just always delighted. So thank you for listening. Thank you for getting in touch.
You want to do a shout out for Robert?
I do want to do a shout out for Robert. Thank you very much. Our friend Robert Hernink, who is one of our listeners in the Netherlands, is going to be on our sister podcast. I mean, I don't think they think of us as their sister podcast.
They won't appreciate that.
They won't appreciate it. They don't want to be tarred with that brush. Our friends who also do a podcast, who we often promote on this podcast and who have, as far as I know, never promoted us on theirs, A Tale of Two Singles, are going to be doing a series where they ask single Christian guys questions that their listeners have put forward. So if you want to listen to Robert, who's one of our listeners, and his answers, he'll be on some of those. And that actually sounds like a super fun thing. They've also interviewed John Mark Comer, who is something of a big deal in evangelical circles.
He's a guy.
He's a guy. Yeah, people know him. So you should listen to it, because Sarah, who hosts the podcast, played me the recording, and she's talking about relationships, and it gets on to talking about sex, and like she's not somebody who talks about sex a lot, and the number of times John Mark Comer says orgasm and she just holds it together. But it's just like, and there's a point where he's like, I mean, this is spoilers if you do want to listen to the podcast, but
for the full experience,
you need to listen to the whole thing. It's actually a very good and very interesting interview. But there's a point where she asks a question about, is there one biblical view of sex? And he goes, well, I mean, there's no like Christian Kama Sutra or anything. And she kind of like pushes through the embarrassment of him saying that, and he's like, I mean, like the Bible doesn't tell us like which positions are best or anything like that. And just the like absolute mortification is truly beautiful, and that is reason enough to listen to it. So I commend it to you. But thank you very much for listening to Beer Christianity. Remember, you can find all of our previous episodes at beerchristianity.libsyn.com. And yeah, tune in again. Please send us your messages if there's anything you'd like us to discuss, if there's any comments that you have. And yeah, goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me. Apparently this is how we're signing off now. You sign off.
Okay.
And also with you.
And also with you. Good. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.